morning, everyone. Oh, what a wonderful, enthusiastic response. Glad to see so many of you in your seats bright and early, ready to go on day 2 of our main conference programming. As you might have heard us talk about yesterday, the theme today is all around best practice. How do we build best practice organizations? How do we attract best talent? How do we develop and grow our people to be the best in class? Now, I gather quite a few of you were out on a harbour cruise last night. Who took a cruise through the harbour last night? Well, lots of hands. Did you have a good time? Yes. I've seen social media covered in photos of people all glammed up with various parts of Sydney in the background of their shots, which was great. Another theme I'm noticing on social media, there's a lot of photos with the WCOA 2018 letters, you know, the giant letters out near the registration area. We're getting some very creative modelling that's going on with the letters. So I'm going to run a bit of a photo competition over the next couple of days. I'm going to put up my favourite snaps from Twitter and from Instagram on the big screen on Thursday. So I'm going to encourage all of you to get that creative expression that I know is burning inside so many of the accounting profession, right? You're just dying for an opportunity to creatively express yourselves. We're going to give you the opportunity to take photos with the big letters out there, and we'll share some of the funny snaps. We've had people that have been doing acrobatics, people that have been popping through the middle of the O on WCOA. So go on and impress me with your creative photography over the next couple of days. Are we ready to get underway? Yes. We have a phenomenal keynote to kick off with this morning. We're delving into all things artificial intelligence, robots, and technology. We have a brilliant person to guide us through the conversation too. I feel like we're hearing a lot about this topic at the moment. You know, it seems there isn't a week or maybe even a day that goes by where we're not reading some kind of report about how quickly AI is going to take our jobs or how significantly they're going to change and shift the economy. We're certainly hearing lots of predictions. Oftentimes when we hear those reports too, they're talking about the impact on accounting. They're often describing accounting as one of the first professions that will be subjected to such significant automation. Now, I think that's a glass half empty view, personally. I think there's a half full view that says this will revolutionize and transform the profession, provide all sorts of new opportunities to be able to have impact, to drive productivity, and certainly to innovate in the way that we deliver services and the products that we use to do so. Today, Dr. Ayesha Khanna is going to talk to us about her incredible research and insights in this field. She's really could be described as the human face of artificial intelligence. She's the co-founder and CEO of one of the leading artificial intelligence companies in Asia. In fact, Forbes magazine has recognized her as one of Southeast Asia's groundbreaking female entrepreneurs. Throughout her career, she's advised on major infrastructure and fintech corporations, including SMRT, Singapore's largest public transport company, Habib Bank, Pakistan's largest bank, and Smart Dubai, the government agency tasked with transforming Dubai into a leading smart city. Ayesha is also the founder of 21C Girls, a charity that provides free coding and AI classes to girls in Singapore. Today, she's going to discuss AI's impact, the role that each and every one of us can play, and give us some suggestions for successful AI adoption. Can we give her a big WCOA 2018 welcome? Enjoy.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So, when you think of artificial intelligence, what do people talk about? This is something people talk about quite a bit. It was a report by Oxford University and that was quoted around a lot, and this is a snippet of it from The Economist, and it says 40% of jobs will be automated. And if you look at the bottom, it says there's a 99% chance of telemarketers being automated and replaced by machines, and then there's a 94% chance of accountants being replaced by machines as well. And then, of course, you keep going up and you see nobody's really safe. There are actors, there's health technologists, there's even economists. But if you're a clergy or a priest, then your job is pretty safe. So I want to talk about what does this really mean. Let's dig down and figure it out. And let's start with this gentleman. So President Barack Obama was at Harvard Law School, not a whole ton of years before me when I was an undergraduate there. And here he is in Harvard Law School library. And you and I can imagine what he must have studied. He probably studied a lot of books that looked like this: tax law, corporate law, and so on and so forth. But what if President Barack Obama turned to his wife and said, you know what, I think I'm going to go back to law school? What would he study if he did that tomorrow? He'd probably study something like this. Now, what is Ravel? Ravel, which was recently bought by LexisNexis, is a software. And what it does is it helps find precedents in cases. So what it does is that when you are trying to research as a first-year law associate in a law firm after you've graduated from Harvard Law School or Yale Law School, and the partner comes in and puts a stack of papers on your desk and says, go and do this research, find out everything on cases like this, Ravel can do it for him. And it does more than that. It actually looks for correlations and insights. Who are the judges? Who are the lawyers? What were the other cases? It looks at keywords. And so if President Obama was to go back to school tomorrow, he would certainly study something like this. And in fact, all law schools are now changing the way they teach law. They're adapting. My friends teach at Yale Law School, and they said, Ayesha, you know what the most popular new course for freshmen is? It's robots and law. So does this mean lawyers are not needed anymore? It doesn't. Does it mean they have to apply themselves to the fourth industrial revolution technologies? They have to learn some new things? Yes, that is what it means. And that applies to everything in that list that we saw. The world is being changed. We have to change with it. And let's look at some of the ways that we can do that. But first of all, to appreciate how artificial intelligence is changing the world around us, we need to step back away from ourselves and look at how we live. One of the biggest concerns for cities these days is safety. There's terrorism, increased criminal activity, and China has figured out a new way that is being adopted by many other countries as well. This is a policewoman. She looks awesome, pretty badass, and she has her sunglasses. But there's something else on her sunglasses as she patrols the streets in Shanghai or Beijing. Actually, in her Google goggles are connected to an image recognition system. That means that there are 176 million surveillance cameras, also known as CCTV. And by the way, there are many of them in New York, and there are many of them in London and other cities as well. And it is using an artificial intelligence tool called SenseTime. SenseTime can help her identify criminals as she walks around the street by comparing it constantly to a database of criminals and other suspicious individuals. The Chinese government has helped SenseTime and is partnering with it with many of its provinces. So next time you're in China and you're going up and down the escalator, maybe in a metro, somebody is watching, and this is going to increase safety in those cities. What about healthcare? You know, I don't know about you, but in some of the cities that I've lived in, I've always encountered very long queues in public hospitals. So this is a gentleman called Ali Parsa, and he started a company called Babylon Health. And essentially what it does is it provides healthcare services as a chatbot in a phone. So that if you're sick, instead of going and waiting in line or calling a nurse and then being on hold, the AI chatbot asks you some questions about your particular ailment, and then it either gives you some advice or it directs you to the right doctor for the right prescription. And actually, Babylon Health said that it made its own AI agent take the same test that doctors in the UK take, and it did as well as them. Which is no surprise, because the old way of becoming a doctor was to rote memorize all the systems of the human body, whereas now doctors have artificial intelligence agents that can help them and can do other things, such as genomics and more personalized healthcare. TELUS has picked up Babylon to bring virtual healthcare to Canada. Samsung is working with it in the UK, and they just signed a $100 million licensing deal to serve customers in Asia. By the way, there are no doctors for much of Asia. There's poverty. And so AI has bought healthcare and democratized access to this fundamental service. In fact, it's so important to economic competition that even whole countries are now saying it's a national strategy. And no one is thinking more deeply about artificial intelligence than China. Made in China 2025 is a national strategy that has decided that by 2020, it will actually have the pillars of an AI-first strategy in place, including talent development, including R&D, and including manufacturing the very chips on which artificial intelligence is made. If you look at it, every month there's another country that says they have an AI policy. Germany has it. I was in France at Viva Tech, the largest conference there, and President Macron unveiled Humanity for AI. Singapore has it. The UK has it. Canada has it. And then there are countries like India that don't only have a strategy, they're looking at it as the opportunity to leapfrog. And by the way, that's what I see. I see a distinct difference in audiences as I move from the developing to the developed world and from the developed to the developing world. The developing world is very excited. They're not afraid of being automated. They're looking at this as an opportunity to get ahead of other countries. And they're not the only ones. Companies are also thinking about it. Companies want to evolve. And in fact, they're using this as a competitive advantage. It's very hard to recognize what companies really do because they have become these adaptive engines, octopuses that are constantly experimenting with new things, empowered by their knowledge of data and deep technology. So is Tesla a car company? It has a solar panel subsidiary. Is it a solar panel company? Well, you know, there's a suburb in Melbourne which is actually called Tesla Town. And if you have $1 million or $2 million to spare, you can buy something here, a house that is entirely powered by Tesla, by the lithium battery, by the car, and by the solar panels. And so is Tesla a utility company now? What about Amazon? Is it an e-commerce company? Is it a rocket company? Were you guys surprised when Jeff Bezos one November morning announced that he had sent a rocket into space, and it was a reusable rocket, one of the best perhaps in the world, in the commercial world? So companies don't have these respect for old school boundaries. What they do is they think the world is our oyster. As long as we have data and we have technology and we're constantly adapting, then we're ahead of the game. They're kind of very much thinking like countries are being forced to think. at the national level. And Amazon now is thinking of becoming a bank. Apparently, it is going to partner with JP Morgan and start giving out loans to people in America. And of course, this is just the beginning. I have a question for you. Why would a Norwegian telecommunications firm buy a bank in Pakistan? It is not the business of telcos to be selling financial services, yet Pakistan is a very interesting market. 206 million people, the majority of whom do not have bank accounts. Many of them don't even have access to basic infrastructure like toilets, but they do have mobile phones. And so Telenor thought, you know what? While the big banks are kind of just being relaxed and complacent about not providing new services, we are going to start something. And what they decided was they're going to start giving out payment processing right on the phone. And it's called Easy Pesa or Easy Money. And you can go anywhere in Pakistan to any little shop, and people who don't have a bank account can actually send money to each other. And this became such a success that when China decided that, wow, this is the market we need to go into, did they partner with the largest bank in Pakistan? No. They partnered with a Norwegian telco called Telenor. This is Telenor's CEO. I had dinner with him in Oslo earlier this year. I was really impressed by his kind of optimism about where he could take his telco given this age of disruption. And by the way, telcos are under pressure too. They're under pressure from the WhatsApp and the Googles of the world. And he said, I see the opportunity. I'm increasing ourselves as a digital company and a digital platform for financial services as well. And then, of course, he sold off his Eastern European business, and he began to fully focus on ASEAN. I actually think Asia may be the most exciting destination for the fourth industrial revolution because of its huge population. So accounting companies are also facing the pressure to evolve. I'm sure all of you have encountered these new kinds of artificial intelligence platforms that are coming out, and you're wondering, what is it going to do to me? What is it going to do to my company, my clients? But how about this? How about we start from another point of view? Instead of thinking, what is it going to do to me? Let's start with a wish list. You know, Christmas is around the corner. Here's something for your Christmas tree. Let's say, hey, AI, you're here to serve me. Here's what I want you to do, and here's what potentially you could do for me because you can mine huge amounts of data. You're fast, you're accurate, you can give me insights that I don't have. So one of the things is, well, it would be nice, I have to review a lot of legal documents and contracts, if those could be automatically understood and any discrepancies in them could be told to me, or anything that I should be aware of, I should be told. And there are companies like this. Kira Systems raised $50 million for the first time, and it's been around for a while, serving clients like Deloitte and looking at things like lease accounting contracts. It uses natural language processing to go through all the different kinds of contracts and helps accounting firms to more efficiently review them and focus on the more important thing, which is there's a problem here, let's solve it, let's talk to our clients. JP Morgan did that as well. And here it's the lawyers that worry, but it said that their software was able to look at commercial loan documents. This is a pilot that they did, and it did in seconds what lawyers took 360,000 hours to do. So this kind of automatic document review is something that would be very helpful in anything from supplier onboarding to procurement to any kind of contract. What else would we like? Well, as accounting firms, it would be nice if we could automatically take data from the client and conduct due diligence. And of course, KPMG has been working on this for quite a long time, for a few years now. They have been thinking about real applications of artificial intelligence that can accelerate and make their teams more productive. And they've been partnering with IBM Watson, and there are lots of other artificial intelligence platforms that you can partner with. You don't have to build them yourself. And in particular, they were looking at commercial mortgages. So at commercial mortgages, they were looking at a number of things. They were looking at structured data, which is data that is very neatly kept and given to you. But they were also looking at unstructured data, information that may be kept in documents or that may be not kept properly and maybe in files but not organized. And all of this, the artificial intelligence platform that they employed was able to go through all this data and again find any inconsistencies, any red flags, or any anomalies that should be addressed. What about fraud and anti-money laundering activity? This is a huge problem. You know, global money laundering, I'm sure you know, accounts for between 2% to 5% of global GDP. And by the way, only 10% of transactions reported, these suspicious transactions, actually lead to further investigation. So there's a huge opportunity here to improve the system, and it is a hugely difficult task to do when there's so many transactions. How can one person or a team of brilliant financial services individuals or accountants find that, even with their Excel macros? Well, there are companies like ISD now. ISD has raised over $100 million. It came out of Stanford University. These are 3 mathematicians, and it uses a kind of mathematics branch called topology. And instead of using statistics to look at anomalies, it kind of puts all the data together and looks at their topology and patterns, and then identifies anomalies and suspicious activity. And HSBC has been using them, and in fact, many, many more companies are beginning to use ISD as well. This is how their dashboard looks like. One of the things they discovered was that actually it doesn't make any sense to be so technical when you're dealing with end business users. So they're updating their software to make it much more business friendly for people who may not have a deep knowledge of data science. What else should we think about? Well, there are new things one couldn't do. You have to audit and monitor inventory because you have to make sure that what your clients or what their competitors or suppliers or buyers are saying is correct. And this can be difficult. So Ernst & Young has been using drones in the audit process. Drones are becoming ubiquitous much more now and can be used for a variety of things, from safety to plant monitoring to security to delivery of goods. Now there are drones that actually can carry human beings as well. But they can also be used to look at inventory, whether it is in the warehouse or whether it is in agriculture, and you're looking at the size of crops, you're looking at health. When you're looking at the financial well-being of a company, that's a very big responsibility that accountants have. And many, many new innovations are happening in the world. I think it's very exciting that there are more tools available as well. And there's hardware like drones, and within it is artificial intelligence powering it, making the kinds of things that were not accessible before real time, that can now give you a finger on the pulse of the financial health of your clients. Now, here's something important. I'm talking to you. I build AI engines for companies. But why should you trust me? You should really have someone or have some engine that explains itself to you. That should be on everybody's wish list. You should never treat AI like a sci-fi movie, a black box. That's not a smart way to think about it. Intelligent individuals demand to know. I'll tell you who really demands to know, the Army. This is an extreme case. One of the partners in my firm, his job has often been to go and recommend to armies how they can understand automated weapons so that one day they can explain why a robot made the decision to kill. And right now, no army really lets any robot do that. And the reason is because there is this problem with artificial intelligence is that it is hard to explain. Because it mines so much data, it becomes hard for even human beings to understand how it reached that conclusion. And that's why the European Union has put down regulations which are very good. It's essentially said, if an algorithm made a decision that significantly affects your life, let's say it refused you a mortgage loan, or it refused your parents' health insurance, you have the right to ask it, why? Why did you do this? Now, GDPR is forcing companies like Facebook and Google and many companies that use AI to explain itself and to empower its business users and business employees to be able to further explain it to its clients. And I think this is a good thing, because the reality today is you give a lot of data to a machine, and then you say, this is a cat. There are 1 million or 100,000 examples of cat. And so the machine begins to form in its mind some of the features that define a cat, pretty much like ISD or another company would define some features that show anomalous or anti-money laundering activity. And then it says, this is a cat with 90% probability. And the issue is, you don't know why it did that. You don't know if it's correct or incorrect, and you're really trusting the team that's put it together or the engine there. And so the vision now and the responsibility for people such like myself is to come up with an explainable version. There are some models coming out called explainable AI. They're a bit slower, they're not as accurate, but they are available to help business users get some insights on how AI makes its decisions. And I think it's important to kind of have that approach. And then, this is the last thing. It should be a colleague. We don't think of artificial intelligence as a colleague because it doesn't have a face yet, it doesn't do anything with us, it doesn't have a physical presence. Okay, so let's go to a factory and start from there. So this is Baxter. Baxter is a robot that is used in factories, and Baxter, over the years that I have been studying Baxter, and now he has a much more brilliant younger cousin called Sawyer, he's become smarter and significantly cheaper. He was $30,000, then he was $28,000, then he was $26,000, now he's $24,000. This means that smaller companies can afford Baxter. You see, the cost of robotics and artificial intelligence is going down, which means that people like you and me can afford it. And if we use it correctly, that's a good thing. And this young woman was with Baxter, and she said that he's actually better company than some of her grumpy colleagues, because he smiles and he has eyes and he makes these movements. And we will one day have those relationships, even with chatbots and artificial intelligence agents. If you have a question about some report or some account, and you have to search for it, wouldn't it be nice to just talk to a chatbot and it'll tell you what it is? So this is an article from Harvard Business Review from 2 years ago, and I really agree with it because I've been saying that for a long time as well, which is that AI will redefine management, and we need to treat it as a colleague. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, you can happily leave over time more and more administration, routine work to AI. Nobody wants to argue that that is a good use of a human being's time. But the key is you can focus on judgment work. Judgment work is defined as following. You understand your corporation strategy. You understand your client's culture. You actually have in mind for them an approach that is good for their long-term financial health. AI cannot do that. All it can do is it can mine a lot of data. It can give you new insights, which will be helpful to you. And that's when the third thing comes in. Why should you treat it like a colleague? So the old way of doing it is, I'm going to use Excel or whatever tool you're using, and it's going to be a tool. I'm going to tell it what to do, and I'm going to get some reports out of it. But if it was a colleague, then you would be much more open to new things it would tell you, and AI can do that. Remember, it can go through millions of data points and give you insights, give you correlations, give you patterns that would be helpful to you. But you have to be open to its suggestions. Conversely, if you were having coffee with a colleague and he said something interesting and new, you would kind of push back also. You would probe it. You would make sure it didn't have any biases in it. And it's the same thing that you need to do with AI and AI teams. You need to both be open to working with them because you'll need them to provide better service, but you should also constantly be questioning them and have a lot of confidence in your own expertise. So here's the question. Countries have a strategy. Companies have a strategy. What is your AI strategy? Because I want to talk to each one of you individually. Have you thought about it? Are you thinking about how you'll use AI? I think you should. And I think Singapore is an interesting example to look at because it doesn't have commodities or energy or a lot of natural resources to sell. It has people. And for us in Singapore, we're obsessed with talent and skills because we need our people and our economy and our country to be relevant to the world as the world is changing. So our Deputy Prime Minister said, hey, Singaporeans, how about this? What if jobs and skills have an expiry date? Which was kind of scary to hear, but very correct at some level because disruption is happening so fast. Imagine an entire nation now kind of having that philosophy. And this was relevant in many fields, including financial services, because Singapore, obviously, like Hong Kong, wants to be a financial hub. And we knew that artificial intelligence was disrupting banking. And how was it going to remain relevant? How was it going to move from being a financial services hub to a fintech capital? And so Singapore had two choices. It could either put its heads in the sand like an ostrich and hope it all blows over, or it could take the bull by the horns and disrupt itself and say, you know what? We're going to invite fintech companies in. We're going to give grants to artificial intelligence companies to come and build the new financial services that are needed to help empower our bankers who are going to lose their jobs potentially because of this to work with these new technologies. Because remember, you have a very deep advantage, which is your domain expertise and experience. This cannot be overemphasized. I could walk into a firm tomorrow And I won't achieve much at all, even though I bring with me 30 professors of artificial intelligence, because we don't understand your industry, we don't understand your clients, we don't understand your problems, we don't understand your vision. We need to work with you. But at the same time, you need to learn to work with us. And this is the new reality. This is the AI strategy. The AI strategy is not to be afraid. The AI strategy is also not to treat it as a black box. But the AI strategy is to learn just enough to be able to collaborate with people who can become your partners and change the very face of accounting. So first of all, let's shatter the myth that AI-driven product teams only need technologists. They don't. Every company is becoming a digital company. But that does not mean that you don't need domain experts, business analysts, sociologists, people who understand people. In fact, all teams need to be more interdisciplinary. You need people who are designers. And you always need a Wonder Woman in the middle. So what happened in Singapore was they started courses in AI and finance, which was very specifically geared towards teaching bankers how to work with AI. They didn't need to learn how to code, but they needed to know enough in their own business environment. And over time, thousands of people have been signing up for this, some of the biggest banks, because they're keen to actually prepare their bankers to succeed in this new world of disruption. And this is one of the courses. It's an AI and finance course. I'm one of the lecturers, but the rest are far smarter than me. And you can see it's really interesting. You know, I do the first lecture, which is an overview of AI, but then others talks very specifically about wealth and asset management, about insurance, about customer service. We need courses like this for accounting, so that accountants, no matter what position they have in a firm, can learn very specifically to their context how this would be helpful to them. And then they can go out and recommend, in fact, proactively recommend to their managers and CEOs or to their employees to build the kind of AI-enabled and AI-powered services they need. And in Singapore, the government gave $500 to all its citizens. They were like, go, take any course you want. It doesn't have to be an engineering course. In fact, mooncake baking is a very popular course. And their point was, you're only successful when you love what you do. So please pursue your passion. Because we know no matter what you do, you will run into the need for data, for technology, for artificial intelligence. If you're an entertainer, if you're a cook, if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant. And when you run into that need, you will either learn it yourself or you will partner with someone who knows it. And so perhaps the really important thing is to become lifelong learners who pursue their passion and to partner with those who are passionate about technologies such as artificial intelligence, such as myself. I find this very useful when I think about myself. And by the way, if anybody is at risk of automation, it is the people who build the AI algorithms, people like me. Because now, believe it or not, Google has an algorithm that can build other AI algorithms called AutoML. So all of us are in the same boat. John Seely Brown said the following. He said, you know, we call ourselves Homo sapiens. Did any of you know what that means? I didn't. It means man who knows. And much of our education has been about knowing. Right? We go to school, we go to college, and it's all about knowing information. That's why we call ourselves knowledge workers. But to be successful in this century that is coming upon us, we need to be more than just Homo sapiens because our iPhone knows more than we do now. We need to equally divide our education and look at our own jobs and see that one part is based on how much we know, but another part is based on Homo faber, man who makes. And this is what I mean by partnering with different teams, different kinds of professionals to make new kinds of products that include disruptive technologies. And finally, man who plays, Homo ludens. And this is letting your imagination be wild and free, kind of like one is back at kindergarten. Why is this important? If you don't do this, if you look at your job right now, and by the way, they say CEOs also need to look at their jobs. Part of their jobs could be automated as well. So right from the top, all the way down to the bottom, are you doing things that are primarily based on how much you know? If so, please rethink how you can improve the balance more towards a more innovative way of approaching it in partnership with deep technologists. And if you had this strategy, imagine now, like I said, your strategy is not what is AI going to do to me, but what is it going to do with me that is going to be awesome and make my career even more fabulous and make my clients happier. Then you will see opportunity everywhere. I mean, it's really literally never been a better time to be working in any field, even those in that long list. I'm going to give you an example of a problem. It's not an accounting problem, but it's a problem that many people have in the developing world. It's a food safety problem. You know, if you are in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Myanmar, any countries in Africa, Latin America, many countries, you have problems like this. You have food safety supply chain problems where, let's say you went to a grocery store, could be anywhere in one of these countries. It's not a very expensive grocery store, and you have some folks coming over for dinner, and you decided to make roast chicken. So you go to the grocery store and you pick up a nicely packed chicken. But is it really chicken? Is it chicken? Say it's free range. Is it free range? Were they really running around happily, or were they closeted in cages? You don't know. You don't know because there is corruption, and because in these countries there are food safety hazards. So this is a problem. And an insurance company, and insurance companies, by the way, are very under pressure because of automation and artificial intelligence, saw an opportunity. They said, you know what? We think somebody's willing to pay for this insurance that, in fact, this chicken was healthy and happy and free range. An insurtech company called Zhong'an. It's a very innovative company. And the latest thing that they're doing is they said, we are going to put IoT sensors on the anklets of 23 million chickens. And then we're going to see if they're actually running around freely and are free range. And we are going to put cameras, much like China has, but for chickens this time. And we're going to see, are they healthy? Are they wounded? And we're going to put this all on the blockchain so that once we do, nobody can tamper with it. This was a very innovative solution. They saw a problem. Believe me, I am sure every day you complain about something, some software, some irritating bureaucratic nonsense you have to deal with. These are problems you could think creatively about for your clients and for yourself. And in the end, it really is about the problem, right? Because what do parents really want? What did you want when you went to get that chicken? You just wanted to enjoy roast chicken with your family. That is the key, is to find problems that can be solved with artificial intelligence, with IoT, with blockchain, with robotics, and there'll be virtual reality. There'll be endless streams of technologies coming towards us. And we can actually have a very healthy attitude towards them because we're not focused on the technology, we're focused on the problem. And I don't know many people who don't find issues with things that they see. We're always seeing things that irritate us, that we think could be better. Or if we just sat down together in a team, or with our clients, or with our stakeholders, or senior management, we could come up with something, just like Zhong'an did. They knew there was a market, and they were going to capture it. And they have many such innovations actually happening at the moment in various fields as well. So for me, I believe that the right way to look at artificial intelligence is the mission that I have, and I hope you'll adopt this mission, which is the purpose of AI is to amplify human potential, your potential, my potential. I don't think I've gotten to my potential yet. I don't think any of you have either. And if we use artificial intelligence, then we can start moving up towards our own self-fulfillment, which will be very meaningful and will actually result in a happier, more fun career, I hope, for all of us. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much for listening today on artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Wonderful. What a wonderful presentation. Can we keep the applause going? It was great. Well done. Great to have you. Well, this is most definitely one of our most popular question sessions yet. They've been flying in thick and fast on the app during your presentation. Some really great takeaways in that presentation. I think not only demonstrating so many interesting examples of companies thinking about the application of AI to the way that they work, but I think some really great challenging questions posed for us. You know, what is your AI strategy? The notion that the purpose of AI that you finished on there is to amplify human potential. And this challenge to change it from what is AI going to do to me to this notion of what is AI going to do with me. I thought that was a really great reframe. So our first question that we've had coming through, and please keep them coming, history is all about unintended consequences. In fact, a number of our speakers touched on that theme yesterday. The outliers and exceptions driving change. Will AI have unintended consequences?
Yes, probably. Technology is a double-edged sword. So we are always going to have the yin and yang of its consequences that we have to deal with. I'll give you a small example. Speech recognition has become much better than ever before. So Baidu has actually created speech recognition software where you can real-time talk to somebody and it translates from English to Chinese. So you don't need to learn Mandarin anymore, probably in the future. But they also have another software in which, let's say you use that software and you recorded my voice as I was speaking for just 5 seconds. Then, with that software, you can pretty much make me say anything. You can call my clients, you can call my mother-in-law, and you can literally just play something and they wouldn't be able to tell that it was not me calling.
Wow.
So there's a lot of this danger of manipulation as well. For something that is so good that it increases human connectivity by translating real time to something similar that destroys human trust. And I think this is something we have to grapple with. Countries like Singapore have put a data and ethics committee for artificial intelligence. It's a constant battle, and for all technologies.
And that's what I was going to ask you. How are companies and countries trying to contend with those potential negative consequences or ramifications?
Well, the first important thing is for companies, you should have a data protection officer. It doesn't have to be an entirely new role. It could be somebody who's trained a little bit, there's going to be a huge demand for more of that. And in fact, GDPR, the European Union regulations, recommend this as a way to comply with GDPR rules. That's one way to make sure that the data is protected and that there are no biases inherent in the algorithms that are happening, and there's no manipulation over there as well. For countries, they are trying to have regulation. The issue with regulation has always been that you have a lot of non-technical people on the committees. So you have lawyers, and you have politicians, and you have policymakers, but where are the AI experts? So now they're beginning to realize that, and I think eventually we will have algorithms that inspect other algorithms, and that's the only way to counter this kind of issue. My own co-founder, his PhD is in finding bias in AI algorithms.
Oh, interesting.
So there are people doing work around that now.
And you touched on the GDPR, which many consider sort of the high watermark of individual rights protection within a digital age. Do you anticipate that we will see countries adopting like almost a rollout or a ripple effect of similar legislation globally?
I think so. I think GDPR has set a high standard for companies such as my company. If we work in Europe as we do, then we have to upwardly comply with GDPR. But they have had a very humanizing effect. And even though it goes against the efficiency and business potentially of companies such as mine that are AI platforms, I think it's good. It's the right way to do it. And new innovation will come if we hold it as a human right that data and the ethical use of AI is important to us as a society.
Now, I've got a question coming in. We've got quite a few coming in. On the forefront of sort of people's rights, the question is, do you think AI is going to take away people's privacy as well?
It does already, and it's not AI. Even before AI came, we happily download so many apps, and so do I, by the way. I'm guilty as well. I will download apps, and it has a long license agreement, and I'm like, I agree.
Yeah, hands up who actually reads their terms and conditions forms, right? Yeah, 2 hands went up in the arena there.
So we are giving away a lot of our rights, and now I think we're going to see, again, some companies that will create apps that help highlight automatically any red flags in those license agreements. But financial companies, banks have a lot of data on us, telcos have a lot of data on us, Google has a lot of data on us, Facebook, all these companies. What is happening now is that we're becoming more aware of it, and rightly so. So I think we are now considering these things, and we should consider it, and we will have to, every society in a way, and every country needs to come up with its own laws and regulations and what it feels comfortable with.
And I think one of the things I certainly garnered from your presentation is perhaps one of the reasons we're even becoming more aware is that the sophistication of how our data is being used is so rapidly increasing. Some of the things you were touching on there are a whole new frontier on how our data might have previously been managed when we handed over our names and emails and some of our basic information.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, our digital footprint is everywhere. And there's the whole issue of cybersecurity, by the way, which is a very big issue. Everyone should, at work and at home, go through these cybersecurity checks every couple of months.
We've got a great question around how to pick up the idea around the AI strategy you were touching on. So the question's contextualised to Australia, but I think that's probably true of every country in the room. A significant percentage of the workforce working in small to medium enterprises who often struggle to have the capital to invest in artificial intelligence. What can these people do to stay ahead and not become obsolete?
That's such a good question. I mean, I think that one of the good things is that with cloud computing and with some of these AI companies, the cost of AI is coming down. And I don't know about the Australian government, but in Singapore, they subsidize small and medium enterprises that actually want to hire AI specialists or that want to buy AI software. So I think that this is something that you should ask the government to do and help with, and look for this kind of software that's available as well.
Great. So AI is here. What do you consider to be the ethical challenges we will face in the future as AI becomes part of our everyday life?
I think the main ethical challenge that we'll face is how do we constrain its ability to manipulate human beings. And that is not up to individual citizens. That is something that the government and specialists need to do. The other thing is, how much data is it using? And should we be paid for that data? Should we be compensated for how much we have become the product of certain companies? And of course, the third one is, how can we teach the moral dilemmas that come with AI? We design AI. The classic example that I'm always asked about is, there's a self-driving car, and there's a pregnant woman with twins, and there's an 85-year-old gentleman, and the driving car has to hit one of them. So which one would it choose? And it's a terrible question. Human beings cannot answer this question. I was asked this question as an undergraduate, first class at Harvard, the justice class. But because we encode our own biases, our own values into AI, it is not prescient, it is not sentient, at least not yet, cannot make its own decisions, then ultimately we need to educate AI engineers to be ethical. And in general, we need to educate those people, like accountants, working with those AI engineers to advise them on ethics as well. So I think education has a big part to play in how we ethically use AI in the future.
If I can ask for a reflection, how good a job do you think we're doing right now at contending with some of those ethical challenges? Because you spoke about how almost every week we're getting a new country announcing an AI strategy. You read a lot of those, predominantly they're indexed towards the commercial and innovative benefit. There's not much consideration necessarily of some of the community and the ethical ramifications. What's your reflection on where we're at in dealing with this?
I think it's improving quite a bit, to be honest.
Great.
I see a lot of articles coming out. I see a lot more public discourse on it. Before, these issues were never brought up at all. I mean, these algorithms were making a lot of mistakes. For example, I'll tell you one thing. There's a huge disruption happening in recruiting and HR. And so there are AI-enabled platforms. And the AI just learns by mimicking what human beings have done in the past. So this company said, you know what, we're going to use AI to help select our candidates. And so it gave it all the information of how it had selected candidates before, and the AI happily crunched all that information, and then it noticed that it was primarily selecting men. And so they thought, I guess men are better for these jobs because AI must know this. But it was not the case. It was the AI was biased because the data was biased because the HR department was biased to begin with. And it's very important to realize that's why domain expertise matters. And ethical domain expertise is better. So I think that you have to watch over how AI systems are designed.
Exactly what I was thinking, that there need to be core kind of design criteria thought about and built in. Question coming through, AI will replace some jobs. What will people do for a living? Could we face an unemployment crisis?
I think that's a very good question. It is true that AI will replace jobs. I think it's important not to give this like happy fuzzy picture where everybody will be employed. I think the people in danger are the senior citizens above 80 who it is difficult for them. Most of them are retired, but many of them also might want to continue working, especially as we age and live longer. So reskilling them is difficult. And so there will always be some part of the population that doesn't adjust to the new economy and its needs, and we have to look after them. That is our responsibility. As companies, we have to reskill our employees. As parents, we have to not just leave it to the schools, which are, by the way, sometimes behind the curve, but to read up on the right things and to introduce our children to the latest disruptions. As individuals who are responsible for our own careers, we need to pay attention to what's happening. And I think that as a country or as countries, we need to look after those displaced and perhaps give them some subsidy or something. for the displacement.
I think it was the Singaporean Prime Minister that you quoted as saying, what if there is an expiry date around skills and around jobs, which is an interesting idea. For those of us who are thinking about this notion of, okay, potentially some skills becoming irrelevant, these new AI-related and technology skills becoming more and more important, be it for us as well as for our people and our teams that we're leading, what's your practical advice on where to start with that skilling? Where can people go? What can they look to? Because a lot of people, I think, go, well, if I didn't learn it at uni, where are my options to go and accessibly begin this process of building this muscle?
So one of the gaps currently is that we don't have courses like AI in finance. But we will. I'm sure within the next 2 years, we will begin to see it. In fact, the people who put together AI in finance are putting together AI in accounting for the largest accounting association in the US. So, but barring the fact that that will become available later on, there are two ways. The first is we should all subscribe to magazines such as MIT Review, such as Wired Magazine, or Tech Review, Technology Review, and we should begin to just read about it. Just reading about it, one article a day, kind of puts you in the mode, or TechCrunch, take anything. Once you're in the mode, you'll begin to familiarize yourself. You could even put a Google alert on AI and accounting, and you'll start getting it in your inbox. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you can watch YouTube videos on conferences. So often what happens is that there are conferences in which people are very specifically talking about the applications of AI to those fields, and those are very useful. They're not that technical, but it helps you position how accounting will be affected by artificial intelligence. And then third is that there are courses for people who are interested on Udemy, on Coursera, and other kinds of online platforms. You don't have to do the homework. You know math already because you're in the accounting business. So you would find it relatively easy to follow some of the things that these professors or these professionals are saying. And sometimes, when you're working out, it's not the most exciting thing to do, but you could watch those videos.
Some great practical tips there for things we can all start doing today, though, that can help us become more and more familiar with this subject matter and this skill base. Now, you mentioned and I found it really interesting, your reflections on the developing world being quite optimistic about AI, particularly around its leapfrog capability. We've got a question around, do you think robots will severely impact low-skilled workers in the developed world? And if so, could this lead to extreme poverty that we've been trying to eradicate?
So robots will replace human beings. Let's just look at the fact that there are 1.8 million truck drivers in the US. They are not from the upper middle class or the middle class even. And when we have autonomous vehicles on roads and highways, it's easier to have autonomous vehicles there because they're straight line. Then it is, what are those people going to do? And so it's as relevant in Australia and America for the low-income class as it is in the developing world. So for this, the difference between the pessimism, perhaps, in these more developed countries and in the developing world is that I see that they are much more driven and enthusiastic to actually take these courses. So I have teams in India and Pakistan and Indonesia, and after a long day working with our clients, I kind of go home and go to sleep and I'm with my kids, but they go back and they study and they take these courses on Udacity, et cetera, and they're so smart, out-of-the-box thinkers. The president of edX, who started the online platform that actually has courses from Stanford and from MIT and Harvard, said that the people who complete the courses that they start, the people who always almost complete the courses are from Brazil, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and China.
Interesting.
And people like me never complete courses. I literally never complete a course.
We've got a question about trust here. How do you develop trust of AI, and how do you trust the right AI?
This is an excellent question, and one, if you have been following AI magazines, et cetera, is very much the question, especially after the Cambridge Analytica scandal. People want to know. And so this is some of the new work that's being done in Microsoft, et cetera, which is on identifying biases. so that you can trust it. So algorithms that would inspect the algorithm to make sure that the AI engine is not biased, and then more attention paid to the data that's going in, so more data exploration at that stage, instead of, oh, there's so much data, I'm just going to feed it all in, but to actually explore the data and see whether it had inherent biases in it as well. For you to trust it, you should be very confident. It's basically logic. Okay, you understand the business problem, the AI team or partner engine is telling you to do something, you should ask them, how did you come up with this? Why does this happen? Where did you get the data? How long is it going to have some negative impact? What could be some other externalities? Is it really going to learn? And that kind of probing, that's all you really need to become relevant in an AI world, because now you can work with the team, very confident in your own domain, you know your priorities, you know what matters to your clients. So I think that's really where you come in from. It's a lot of probing and asking questions.
Yeah, so the application of sort of the forensic questioning capability so many in this room have got to a new frontier.
Absolutely. Right, you guys have a head start already.
Perfect. Now, how can AI help to reduce inequality and development gaps between countries? So how could it be a lever for good in that regard?
I mean, it can be a huge benefit. And I grew up in a poor country in Pakistan, so I know that healthcare, for instance, it's so dismal, the fact that people don't get the right advice at the right time. And so the fact that we have chatbot services like Babylon Health that not only answer your questions immediately, but can connect you to the right doctor and can have telemedicine after that. It's possible because of artificial intelligence. Education. How can one man teach 50,000 people at the same time? Because artificial intelligence is automatically monitoring some of the exercises, is providing some of the answers to questions. At Georgia Tech, there was a professor. He had many teaching assistants, including one teaching assistant called Jill Watson that could never make it in person in class, but was up day and night, had no social life apparently, was answering all the questions. And at the end, he said that it was actually a chatbot answering questions as a teaching assistant.
None of the students had noticed.
They thought she was a bit cold, but apart from that, they thought she was fine.
Kept all sorts of weird hours, no doubt, but nobody picked up on anything else.
No, so I think that, and these are just two of the things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at sustainability by driving, I mean, we have built systems where you can optimize routes that cars take so that there's less traffic and congestion. I think all of this means that poor people, and there's so much injustice because they have to worry about the very basic things. If they don't have to worry about that, then they have equal opportunity to things that we did. And for me, equal opportunity is upward mobility.
So I'd say you're very much a realist. There's certainly an optimistic tone to your outlook. Would that be right?
Yes.
About AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I'm an optimist.
We've got quite an accounting-focused question. Do you think AI will prevent financial frauds or help us to detect them earlier?
It should help us to detect them earlier, for sure. We're seeing that already with some of the companies like IASD and Feedzai, that with finding new kinds of correlations and data mining techniques, you can find financial fraud. But on the other hand, using AI, bad people could increase financial fraud at the same time as well. I don't know how they're using it, but so there's always that. Because we all have access to the same algorithms.
So it remains to be seen, probably, whether it'll be net good or net bad in that regard.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's never static. Like, balance is a dynamic state of being.
Yep.
Right? So you're constantly up and down.
All right. What are the differences between emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Well, they're going to get closer over time. So emotional intelligence, I mean, we know it's how you deal with each other, how you have empathy, you can understand problems much better, you are aware socially about how to behave. Artificial intelligence is, at this moment, something that we call narrow AI. And narrow AI means that it's very narrowly focus on a task. And it does that task really efficiently using data, but all the other things around it, such as, if there's a divorce or if there's somebody who's ill, it can tell you everything around it, but it can't talk to the patient. It can't spend time caring. But I would say that artificial intelligence is now becoming more social in nature. And especially we are seeing for the elderly in certain places like Japan, they are using AI-enabled little seals and puppies that react to when elderly people touch them, and that does make them happier and more satisfied. So it could become emotionally intelligent. Again, it's not human. We should stop trying to think of it as a competition. So what if it becomes emotionally intelligent? We'll use it more.
Yeah, it's interesting. When Sophia was recently in Australia on her world tour, for those who don't know Sophia, she's the world's first humanoid robot. And I had the privilege of interviewing her, sitting on a couch like this for 25 minutes chatting to a robot. And it was quite surreal because I watched her get put together out of a suitcase bit by bit. Then they plugged her in and she lit up, and all of a sudden her eyes started moving and she started talking. And you got partway into the conversation and it was sort of like, okay, I'm not talking to a robot, but I know I'm also not talking to a human. It was sort of interesting middle territory already, and I know she's very early prototype in many ways.
Yeah, she's very early.
So I wonder about, you're right, around how many emotional intelligence capabilities we might have in robotic technology before too long. Be interesting to see.
Yes.
All right. Speaking of, how far off are we from readily available, effective, off-the-shelf AI products?
There are off-the-shelf products already, but they're not kind of general products. So it's unfortunately not at a point where you imagine something and it's there. But let's say you wanted anti-money laundering, you wanted a drone for auditing. Some of the software already exists. And you can subscribe to it. Some of these are Silicon Valley-based companies or European-based companies, or here, startups are providing these software. So it's still a little bit in the experimentation phase. But we will see much more of this. Even I have a services firm, but we are building our first product, which is a customer service automation platform. And we are now focusing on actually Pakistan because it has 4 languages. And we are building a platform where you can just speak to the phone, and it will actually transact for you for banks, and it will actually give you a lot of information.
Cool.
So I think that all companies are moving towards this kind of commoditized AI on demand.
Now, I'm not sure if this is specifically in reference to the Chinese surveillance that you talked about in your presentation, but how do you feel about the use of AI in societies balanced against the preservation of civil liberties?
Yes, so this is a question where you think different societies have an agreement with their government, and we may not agree with different places. In some places, security, for instance, in that example, where it's heavily populated, densely populated, is a real concern. In other cases, it's not. So I think this is something that each country needs to come together, and then there will be blocks of countries, as the European Union did, and of course we have ASEAN in Asia, and other kinds of blocks, regional blocks. And then maybe, with the United Nations, we may have a global approach to human rights and the preservation of human rights in the context of an AI-infused world.
Nice. What effort is being made to take AI knowledge to schools and colleges in third world countries so that students can graduate with a knowledge of AI?
It's still not happening enough, even in first world countries.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So, and I hope that all your children are getting exposed to coding. It's as important as reading and writing and knowing math, and also to thinking of it as a creative tool which they can use to build things that they want. That's the reason I started my charity. I felt women especially feel a lack of confidence when there are technical discussions in a boardroom. I'm often the only woman who has kind of a has an AI and computer science background talking about algorithms. And I really want all girls to feel confident. You don't need to have studied AI to partake in a conversation about a product that uses AI or a service that relies on it. And so that's why I started my charity. There are many charities like that, many nonprofits, and some of the big tech companies are supporting this as well, including in the third world.
So it's predominantly being supplemented by companies at the moment as opposed to being kind of led through schools and governments themselves.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yep. Now, I'm conscious that our time, unfortunately, is drawing rapidly to a close. A big conversation that you've led us through this morning. I'm eager to ask everyone here listening, what's the call to action you'd like to leave them with? What do you like to encourage people to do after hearing what you've shared to take up your message?
My call to action would be partner with artificial intelligence. Be bold, don't be afraid. Take the first step, put that Google alert in, and start knowing what is happening to your industry so that you can be ahead of the curve, and not just be ahead of the curve, but you can ride the wave and enjoy the beach that comes with it.
I love that. And fitting that we're in Sydney to do that, indeed.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you join me in thanking Ayesha? What a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much.
That's brilliant. So phenomenal to have such a deep subject matter expert here, but one that could just absolutely share so many working examples. I think sometimes this is such a cerebral conversation, and that often makes it difficult to draw it down to tangible application in business and to think through some of the ramifications that we as business leaders need to be thinking about in the here and now. So I thought that was a really brilliantly put together presentation. Can we thank her once more?
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you, guys.
It was great. Now with that, I get the opportunity to invite you to head to morning tea in the exhibition hall. I should also add, if you haven't visited already, the Business Connect Lounge is open all week long. Drop in and say hello. They've got food there as well, and there's also small group sessions. So there's the opportunity to see some micro presentations during your breaks. Please take the opportunity to rate the session and enjoy your next activities. Make sure to check the app for your timings for the sessions after the break. Thank you, everyone.